Hey guys, welcome to our reading lesson. Let's go ahead and get started by reading our learning target. Remember, our learning target helps us to focus what we are going to be doing. I can identify points the author writes in a text and describe how reasons support the points. Remember, identify means to find. Who's the author? He's the writer, or she is the writer of the text. All right, now let's look at this word points. This is talking about key points. Key points are important ideas that the author wants the reader to understand. It's kind of like the main idea, okay? So a key point is the important idea or that main idea that the author wants us to learn or take away from the text. Now, the author provides reasons, okay? Gives reasons to support that key point. So let's look at this reason. Reason is giving why an idea is right or true. Okay, so this tells why. And these reasons help to support the key point. Support means to explain or to provide evidence that supports that main idea or that key point. It tells about the key point, okay? So in order for us to be successful with this learning target, we need to be able to find key points and reasons to support the key points. We also need to be able to answer questions and write about what you are reading, okay? So we need to find key points and reasons, and we need to be able to answer questions and write about what we have read, okay? All right, so in our Ready Reading book, we are on page 318. 318. This text is titled Bugs, Nature's Time Machine. This is an article. It's giving us real true facts about bugs, okay? Now, as we're reading through, I want you to think about what the author's key point is and what reasons the author gives to explain those key points, okay? All right, you read through this yesterday, but it's just a good refresher for us to read through it again. All right, go ahead. I want you to read through this with someone, by yourself, or to a stuffed animal, but this needs to be read through. When you're done reading through it, you may unpause and we will continue. All right, so let's go ahead and let's look at page 320. You should have answered the questions on these next couple of pages yesterday. If you did not, go ahead and pause the video, answer the questions before returning to the video. What we're doing is we're going to go over these questions and analyze the answers. So we're going to talk about why these answers were incorrect and why the answers were correct to help us to better understand what it is that we're doing. Remember, this is the success criteria, being able to answer the questions about what we've read, okay? All right, let's go ahead and let's look at question number 1 on page 320. Okay, you will have to flip back and forth between this page and the text so that you can go back and find evidence if you need. Okay, all right, so this question has 2 parts. First answer part A, then answer part B. Part A, what key point does the author make about cockroaches? So key point, remember, that is that important idea that the author wants us to take away or know. So think about the main idea. What is it that author is telling us about cockroaches? Cockroaches have hardly changed at all. Cockroaches have flat bodies and legs that are good for running. Cockroaches eat many different things. Cockroaches used to be larger. So think back in your text. Which paragraph were cockroaches talked about in? Paragraph 2, right? I'm going to reread paragraph number 2. Not so fast. Insects long ago looked a lot like insects today. One kind of bug, the cockroach, has hardly changed at all. It still has a flat body and legs built for running. It still eats many different things, both living and dead. Cockroaches are built in a way that works well for them. In fact, cockroaches might stay the way they are for many more millions of years. So I saw some key words in there. It's still, it's still, it's still. That lets me know that the author says that the cockroaches have not changed much, right? So now let's look at our choices. Cockroaches have flat bodies and legs that are good for running. That's a detail from the text, but that was not all that the author told me about. So that is not the key point. That is just a reason, okay? Cockroaches eat many different things. Did the text talk about cockroaches eating? Yeah, but that's not one way that they have changed, right? Cockroaches used to be much larger. Is that true? That's not even a true fact. That's an incorrect fact. The key point that the author was trying to make about cockroaches is that cockroaches have hardly changed at all. So in this question, they gave you reasons and the key point, and you had to decide which one was the key point and not just the reasons. So B and C were just reasons that supported the key point, but the key point that the author wanted us to know was cockroaches have hardly changed at all. Now we're going to give two reasons that the author gives to support the key point. So what are the reasons? The explanation or the sentences that describe more about the key point that cockroaches have hardly changed at all. So I'm going to go back and remember how I told you I saw some keywords in that paragraph too? It's still. That lets me know that it's still is the same way that it used to be. So that is a reason, an explanation for why cockroaches have not changed at all. So you need to write those sentences. It still has flat bodies and legs for running. That's one reason. What's another reason that cockroaches have not changed much? Remember, there's another sentence that says it's still what? It still eats many things. So that is another reason that's telling us that it hasn't changed. And remember, still, it's still, okay? All right, now let's go ahead and let's move on to number 2, okay? That was just question 1, part A and B. Now let's move on to number 2. Oops, sorry. All right, 2 and 3. Number 2. The author says that insects today look a lot like they did millions of years ago. Underline 3 facts to support this key point. So here they are giving us the key point, and we have to find the reasons why this key point is true. So the key point here is that insects today look a lot like they did millions of years ago. Dragonflies from long ago could be as big as dogs. That is true, but that's not really telling me what they looked like, okay? It is, but let's see if there's a better detail here. B, today's cockroaches still has a flat body. That's true. Prehistoric dragonflies had long, thin bodies. That's true. Cockroaches are built for running. That's true. Ancient dragonflies had wingspans of up to 2 feet. That's true. But it doesn't support that they look like today the same as they did then, okay? So that one is just a fact of the older dragonflies. That's the same with A. That fact told us about the ancient dragonflies, but not how those dragonflies look the same today, okay? Most insects today are much smaller than they once were. That's telling us about them today, but it's not telling us how that was alike to the past. So today's cockroaches still have flat bodies. That compares then and now. Prehistoric dragonflies had long, thin bodies like they do now. And cockroaches are built for running like they do now. Okay? All right, number 3. Reread paragraph 5. Ooh, that has a prefix in it. What's the prefix in reread? Re, which means again. So we're going to read again. Reread paragraph 5. What key point does this sentence from paragraph number 5 support? So I'm going back to paragraph 5 and I'm going to reread. Scientists think that many insects have not changed much because they haven't needed to. They were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed. So they didn't need to change themselves. All right, so what is the key point made that this reason supports? They were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed. Insects haven't changed much because they haven't needed to. Does this sentence support that they were still able to find food as the world changed? Let's put a star beside that. Some insects have changed a lot in some ways and not so much in other ways. Does that tell us why they were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed? No, that's telling us that they had to change. So nope. C, insects long ago look a lot like insects today. Well, we're talking about their looks, but we're not talking about as the world changed, how they continued. Okay? Cockroaches are built in a way that works well for them. That's just a detail about cockroaches. That does not tell us the key point that is supported with the reason they were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed. This A does. The key point is that insects haven't changed much because they haven't needed to. They haven't needed to change because they're still able to find food and shelter. Okay? All right, now let's go ahead and let's go on to number 4. Number 4. All right, number 4 says to use a dictionary entry to answer the question. So this is from a dictionary, and we need to use this to answer the question. Shelter, something that protects from weather or danger. 2, a shield to hide. 3, a refuge, or a place for poor or homeless to stay for a while. Which meaning matches how shelter is used in this sentence? They were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed. So which meaning of shelter is used in this sentence? So shelter is a multiple meaning word. That means it has more than one meaning. So we have to use the context to decide. Okay? So does shelter mean something that protects from weather or danger? Does shelter in this sentence mean to shield or hide? Does shelter in this sentence mean a refuge or a place for the homeless or poor to stay for a while? I know that one's not true because we're talking about bugs here and we're not talking about people. So meaning 4 is out. What about a refuge? A refuge means somewhere that can rescue them. So we're not talking about that either. All right, so we're down to something that protects from weather or danger, or to shield or hide. They were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed. Did they need to shield or hide from anything, or do they need to be protected? They need to be protected as the world changed. So the correct meaning of sheltered in this question or in this sentence is A, something that protects from weather or danger, okay? All right, number 5. Which sentence best describes the key point of the entire article? So what is the key point of this whole article? This entire article is talking about how insects have not changed much, okay? How insects of long ago are still similar to insects of today. So we need to find a sentence that best describes that insects haven't changed much today. Cockroaches and dragonflies have survived for millions of years. Insects haven't changed much since prehistoric times. Insects are built in ways that allow them to survive. Insects today are smaller and weaker than they once were. Was the whole article about insects being smaller and weaker than they once were? No, we read about the dragonfly, and it used to be bigger than it is now, right? So that is not true. All right, C, insects were built in ways that would allow them to survive. Well, they can still survive today, too, so it wasn't all about them surviving. B, insects haven't changed much since prehistoric times. Is that true? Yeah, let's put a star beside it so we make sure that we're looking for the best choice. Cockroaches and dragonflies have survived for millions of years. Now, that's true, but was the whole article really focusing on just how cockroaches and dragonflies have survived? No, it was about how insects haven't changed a lot, right? But the dragonfly and the cockroach is an example that the author gave. So B is the correct answer. Insects haven't changed much since prehistoric times. All right, now we're looking at the short response questions. Number 6 gets you to plan your response so that you can answer it in number 7. All right, the question says, why does the author think it's a good idea to look at insects closely? I remember that was the last line of the article. You might just, it's the last paragraph. Don't say ooh, instead look at it closely. So why? What is the reason that the author wants us to look closely at insects? Reread the text and underline details that tell you what insects were like millions of years ago and today. Okay? So you might have already done some underlining through here, but let's go back and let's look at this again. As we're rereading, we're going to underline sentences that tell us what insects were like in the past and today, okay? All right, so turn back to page 318. Put your finger on the first word and read. Have you ever wondered what insects looked like millions of years ago? They probably looked nothing like insects do today, right? Not so fast. Insects long ago looked a lot like insects today. One kind of bug, the cockroach, has hardly changed at all. It still has a flat body and legs built for running. So that's something that we can underline. That tells us what insects are like today and in the past. It still eats many different things, both living and dead. That's another one. Cockroaches are built in a way that works well for them. In fact, cockroaches might stay the way they are for many more millions of years. All right, number 3, paragraph 3. Other insects have changed a lot in some ways and not so much in other. Prehistoric dragonflies looked much like they do today. So that's something that we could underline. The dragonflies of the past look a lot like they do today. They have long, thin bodies and 2 sets of wide wings. So that's something that we can underline because that's the way that they looked in the past and today. All right, paragraph number 4. But there was one big difference. Dragonflies a long time ago were much larger. That's something we can underline. They had wingspans of up to 2 feet long. That's something we can underline. This means that a dragonfly could be as big as a dog. That could cause problems for people today. We are lucky that today's insects are much smaller than they once were. Paragraph number 5. Scientists think that many insects have not changed much because they haven't needed to. They were still able to find food and shelter as the world changed, so they didn't need to make themselves. The next time you see an insect swarming in a garden, don't say ooh, look at it closely. You might just be looking into the far off past. So we've underlined some details about cockroaches and dragonflies in the past and today. So now we're going to explain the reasons that the author gives to support the point that it's a good idea to look at insects closely. So remember, we need to make sure that we restate and answer the question. So the question is, why does the author think it's a good idea to look at insects closely today? The author thinks it is good to look at insects closely because, all right, so we need to answer that. What's the reason that authors want us to look at the insects closely? They think that's a good idea because they haven't changed a lot. They haven't changed a lot since the past because they haven't changed much. All right, now we need to give evidence. We need to cite our evidence and give those reasons why. So we're going to go back to our text at what we underlined. What did the author say about the insects not changing over time? Cockroaches. Let's start with cockroaches. Cockroaches still have long, flat bodies and eat. What did it say about them eating? And eat many different things. All right, now let's think about the dragonflies. Dragonflies have parts that didn't change, but they did have parts that did change. What has stayed the same with the dragonflies? Well, we underlined it in paragraph number 3. They had long, thin bodies and 2 sets of wide wings. Do they still have long, thin bodies and wide wings? Yes, dragonflies still have long, thin bodies and wide wings. So when we're looking at these bugs closely, right, the author's telling us to do that so that if in the future we can compare those bugs that we see today to the bugs in the future to see if they stayed the same or see if they changed any, right? All right, guys, great job. Let's go back and reread and make sure we answered the question, why does the author think it's a good idea to look at insects closely? The author thinks it's a good idea to look at insects closely because they haven't changed much. Cockroaches still have long, flat bodies and eat many different things. Dragonflies still have long, thin bodies and wide wings. All right, let's reflect back on our learning target. I can identify points the author writes in a text and describe how reasons support the points. Remember, in order for us to be successful with this learning target, we needed to find key points and reasons that supported the key points. Were you able to do that today? All right, then we also needed to be able to answer questions and write about what we read. Were you able to do that today? If you were able to do those 2 things, then you have successfully met our learning target. If there was a part that we still needed more practice on, that's okay. As we're reading, we need to make sure that we are finding those key points and thinking about the things that let us know more about those key points, okay? All right, great job, guys.